to Stand the Wine Man TV. I am your host, Stan Rattan, and this is the Blue Collar Wine Show, where I try to help you spend your wine dollars wisely. And I've been trying to get Luke Bradford on this program for 2 years, and he finally acquiesced, and now he's here. Thanks, Luke.
You're welcome.
For coming on board. Luke is the chief bottle washer, janitor, winemaker, and owner of Cor Cellars, which happened to be my winery of the year 2013. Boy, it doesn't seem that long ago, does it?
Yeah.
Time flies. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Cor Cellars is about 4,000 case production, so it's pretty small. But the reason I chose him as my winery of the year is because I feel like his wines really show sense of place and also personality. That's what I'm looking for. A winery of the year is looking for winemakers that really try to instill their philosophy of winemaking, their, making sure that the wine does fit the profile of the varietal, doesn't we use the word manipulate, I hate that word, but doesn't manipulate the wines in such a way that it changes them. I don't think you're as concerned about having the same flavor profile year in and year out. I believe you are into vintage variation.
Absolutely.
So why don't you give the audience a little story behind your winery?
Alright, well, my name's Luke Bradford, and I got into wine business through a family member who is sort of a distant cousin, a first cousin of my mother's, who has two wineries in Italy, one in Tuscany, southern Tuscany, and one in Sicily. So I went over during college. I'm from New York originally. I went to college in Evergreen down in Olympia, and I took some time off halfway through school and did a year harvest in Tuscany. And then I went back, finished college, went back and did a couple more harvests down in Sicily, Etna. And so I was looking for a volcanic region to move to make wine, and ended up coming back to Washington. And the gorge was really appealing to me because the area had such a diverse climate of very cold sites, and as you get east, into quite a bit warmer. So we work predominantly with whites from our area, and some Malbec, and then a lot of our reds are out east. The North Seven Hills is still in our county, and it's only about 60-70 miles east of us, so there's close enough range there. But really from the east to the west in the gorge, you have this massive change of weather. And you go from really alpine sites, you'll try the Alba, the Pinot Gris Gewurz, to the eastern side of the gorge when you're getting into really warm Cab country. So yeah, long story short, I bought an old farm there and been fixing it up for 12 years, and here we are.
Cool. And so you were, if I remember right, weren't you involved in some sort of farming, like, was it dairy or what was it?
Actually after your article came out, I got a lot of flack for that because I actually grew up in New York City, but my mom grew up and my grandfather owned a dairy farm, and he worked in various other businesses, and so that was one of the things that he did. But it had this large farm, and so we spent a lot of weekends there, holidays, and when we'd be in trouble, we'd be out there kind of, I wouldn't say working the farm exactly, but a few mornings here and there. But we were a lot of farm time, and I moved from New York down there when I was in middle school. So when that was in the article, one of my uncles immediately called me. He's like, "Yeah, I grew up on a dairy farm, huh?" And called me out. But yeah, my family has been involved in it's a large operation of it's mostly commodity crops, alfalfa, cattle, dairy, and now it's mostly run by a young guy who's a friend of ours, not any member of the family. It's just mostly hay, feed.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, I'm a city guy originally, but my dad's from southern New Jersey, and many generations of oyster fishermen, and then my grandfather was a vegetable farmer. So we kind of had agriculture on both sides of the family, but
Sure.
I was a city guy.
Well, I mean, upstate New York, there's a lot of dairy farms up there, so that didn't sound too weird. But that's kind of funny that actually got some attention over that one. You're at 4,000 cases right now. Do you plan on going to more production? Are you kind of happy with this?
We're going to stay there for a few years, but we're building a new facility right now to be able to expand a little bit. And I think the plan would be to grow the Alba and the Momentum, our Bordeaux blend, perhaps the Rosé, some of the more sort of price appropriate, under $20 wines, and keep bumping that. but still maintain that 200 to 500 cases of each varietal wine. We make about 7 or 8 wines and then a few extra small. So yeah, I could see us growing, I think, a comfortable zone in there around 5, just over 5,000, 5 to 6
Yeah.
would be a good zone. It's kind of what we're shooting for, a 5-year plan for now.
And you're going to be a father here pretty soon.
Yeah,
July. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
So somebody to take over the family business, right?
We'll see. We'll see.
We can only hope, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I always wish my dad would have been a winery owner.
It's a funny one. You see, you know, like my uncle in Italy, and his kids are just starting to get involved a little bit with him. And I don't know whether one of them's a PhD, and the other's a concert violinist. So I don't know whether they'll take it up. The other one's the other one's an academic in New York City. So who knows what's going to happen there? But yeah, you kind of always hope that in the old model that there's someone to follow up and keep it going, because so much of what we do, so much of the work of a winery is really long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that's come up and that is really kind of curious to me, and Chris Sparkman actually brought it up, is, and I'd like to get your opinion. Washington State is probably one of the few states, well, one of the few areas in the world that has such great diversity already, from Cinsault, Tempranillo, Grenache, Cab Franc. I mean, the amount of grapes that Washington State can grow and do well is amazing. Do you have a thought on that? Why that's the case with Washington State?
Well, a lot of it has to do, we're a little farther north, so California would also have that ability, except they have less cold climate regions. So there's the Sierra Nevada foothills, and then way up into Mendocino and Humboldt counties, and some of those areas way north. But Washington, still has these alpine zones, and so there's a lot of territory to be planted. Let's say in Chelan, Leavenworth, the western side of the gorge, way up north, the Okanagan, and you have sort of the ability to be in these very alpine sites, or down in the eastern Washington desert, where it's so warm that you can kind of pick and choose what kind of a sort of macro climate, mesoclimate you want to be. And with irrigation, obviously, they're able to to grow just about anything out east. But yeah, the cold climate regions, I think, are really the up and coming, because we know now we can do cab and warm varieties. There's no lack of heat. Our growing season is about as long as you could ever hope for. But what's interesting now is to see the western side being planted, even in the Puget Sound, in southwest Washington, the gorge for sure, Lake Chelan is really exploding. And that to me is really interesting to see this for reds and whites, the colder climates being pushed kind of into the mountains. But in northern latitude, we just have the ability to grow a lot more mountain varieties, as well as obviously the warmer climate sites out east.
So what do you think is the next? Well, we know Malbec, kind of, you called it, I like the term you used with Malbec, you called it the...
Always the bridesmaid.
The bridesmaid, that was it, the bridesmaid. It kind of never got the respect of the bride. But it has taken a foothold in Washington State. Obviously more expensive than Argentina, but we know why. Do you see any other varietals maybe pushing, like I say this because I'm a huge fan of Cinsault, and I've seen some great Cinsault come out of Washington State.
I think, and there's so many different focuses that you can get into. I mean, within Bordeaux, I think it's always interesting to see, as you get into these 20, 30 vintages now, and to find these sites that are they know the key cab sites of Horseheaven and Red Mountain predominantly. And then it's interesting, I think those varietals have been planted so long, and there's only the 5 predominant varietals that they're starting to kind of figure out where those go. With the Rhones, you figure the Syrah's only been planted here for so long. I don't know exactly when the first stuff was planted. I think David Lake in Colombia, but it must have just been in the 90s or the late 80s. So you have a lot of those varieties. And so Grenache is mine, Mourvedre are kind of my favorites. And you start to see those. I'm really intrigued with Spanish and Portuguese wine varieties. I think I don't want to branch out too far. We do make Tempranillo, but I think there's a lot of interest in those varieties, and as those wines, in a way, the way Argentina put Malbec on the map with having these sort of lower price point, very juicy, fruity wines, I think in that same price point, if stylistically, Spain and Portugal probably have some of the most robust, big juicy wines for that under $20 range.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of people in Washington are taking note of that. See, Doug McRae has his Salida project, and a lot of people into Tempranillo, or calling it Garnacha, obviously, same grape. It's in France. There's, I don't know. I think the Spanish varieties, Portuguese, are kind of the most interesting to me outside of what we do. I mean, we're kind of keeping our focus on Bordeaux for reds, and the Tempranillo has been a really fun one to work with.
Have you seen anybody do Touriga Nacional yet?
Yeah. I can't think offhand, but I know there's, I would say maybe it's Brian Carter or somebody who works with a lot of varieties.
Yeah, Brian Carter does do.
And there's,
yes. Opulento.
And I think it's interesting to see those made as, table wines as well as the sort of dessert style.
Yeah.
Port style.
Yeah, and of course, for those who don't know, Tempranillo has the most synonyms of any grape varietal. They call it Tinta Ruiz in Portugal up in north, and Aragonés in the south. Those are just two names of Tempranillo, and in Spain they've got a million of them. Yeah. So if you ever want to know what that grape is, chances are you'll be right if you say Tempranillo.
And then the stories that I read about it was in Jancis Robinson's new book. They're studying the DNA parentage of all these varieties, that it may actually be from Burgundy originally.
Tempranillo?
It was brought to Spain, but that's, who knows.
We'll find out.
Anybody's guess.
So we're going to try a few of your wines, Luke. This is the first one we're going to try is the Alba Cor. Is there a cameraman ready behind? Oh, by the way, we're shooting once again. For those who don't realize, this is Mike's Wine Bar and Cafe, the vegan capital of the San Juans. And this is Alba Cor. Cor Alba. 2013, 60% Gewürztraminer, 40% Pinot Gris, Solilo Vineyard, Columbia Gorge. This rolls in at $19. Got it, Mike?
I do.
All right, excellent. So Solilo Vineyard, that's St. Michel plays a lot with that.
And a lot of people do. It's one of the older sites in our area, and probably around the state even. It would register as one of the older continually producing sites. I think the original vines there were planted in the early 70s, and it's just one of the most classic cold climate sites in the state. And it truly is. I mean, it's right smack in the middle of the gorge on the Washington side, directly across from Mid River, Oregon. But it's up at pretty high elevation. The Columbia River, as it carves right through there, is only 100 feet in elevation. And Underwood Mountain just jacks straight up out of the river. And it's an old volcano that sort of exploded onto itself. So the soil is actual volcanic ash. It's not salt. It's actually ash. There's 30 to 40 feet of it. And it's just really, really deep soils. And it's this Solilo is planted. The main block is up at, I think, roughly about 1,500 feet. And it's surrounded, Doug fir and a lot of pear orchards up there. But it is cold. It is a cold site, and so you get a lot of the characteristics of Gewürztraminer, in a warmer site where it can be very floral. In Solilo, you tend to have it goes only to the citrusy and the lime, fruit, maybe a little bit of tropical fruit, but it never gets to the level of being sort of potpourri.
Sure. So this is what you're talking about, the example of the cooler climate.
Yeah, and the Gris, has this wonderful acidity, and I always think it might be osmosis from the pear orchards themselves, but it always, to me, has a real malic acidity to it, an apple and pear acidity. So the idea was we knew a bunch of producers that were making Gris and Gewürz single varietal wines from Solilo. My favorite was Latitude 46. It's now Dowsett family. Chris Dowsett in Walla Walla makes a single varietal Gewürz. I think it's the best one of the bunch. And we wanted to try something a little different, so it went in an Alsatian style to do a wine. You have these sort of field blends where it's up there. It's a lot of times they'll include Pinot Blanc or Riesling or things like that. But you have the spiciness and the viscosity of the Gris, of the Gewürz, and then the Gris has that kind of laser acidity. Cool. And we ferment this all in concrete, so it fleshes the wine out a little bit. It does breathe quite a bit, similar to a barrel fermentation. And it's all co-fermented. We pick it with a couple, 30, 40 hours apart, press it all, and ferment it all together.
Cool. Let's give it a whirl, see what we got. You can sure get the slaty kind of mineral-y thing on the nose.
Yeah, I like these glasses. I think we can fit a whole couple bottles in here.
I know. It's a little bit cold, so we're not going to get exactly what we probably want out of it, but
Solilo is one of the few vineyards that I now could, I feel confident I could pick out a wine from that vineyard regardless of varietal. And I don't have that ability with and even a lot of the other sites we work with. But this one always, Underwood Mountain has a real character to it, and I always think of this kind of, there's almost a saltiness, but it's very, it's fruit driven, but it's not, it's not overly floral. You always have this kind of backbone.
Oh, it's got a nice dryness to it. There's good minerality. It certainly even has almost a chalkiness to it, which is real good, which is real interesting. It gives it a lot of character. Really does show the site.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have now with a lot of focus in Chardonnay now with the new Chris Brendan Layton and Charles Smith's new deal. What's that called? Sixto. And then Gorman's Ashton, these sort of Chardonnay focused projects, and they all invariably will have a Solilo in their lineup. There's Array Cellars that makes the 3 Chardonnays that Venom carries.
Yeah.
And, it's a really classic site that is always up there in those top 3 or 4 Chardonnay sites in the state.
It's certainly very food worthy one. I can see that with shellfish, mussels, clams.
Just a great salad wine.
Yeah.
Mushrooms, things like that. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. Excellent. That stuff. This is
how
awesome.
old were these vines?
The vines, that's the old block of Gris and Gewurz. I think the Gris is older, perhaps planted in like 76, and maybe the Gewurz was a few years later. But the original block there was planted in 73, I think, 74. And I think these might have been late 70s, or might be as late as early 80s, but I think it's the old stuff. Because there was originally a lot of Riesling planted at Solilo, and then in the 80s they replaced a lot of that. So it could have been part of the replacement, or it could have been the original block.
All right. So now we're going to move on to the 2013 Cor Cellars Rosé. This rolls in at $14. This is, by the way, this is you're transitioning into the 2014. But we were so impressed with this yesterday when we tasted it that we just thought we'd include it in this event, in the show. Horseheaven Hills, McKinley Springs Vineyard. Now, where's McKinley Springs Vineyard at?
That's Horseheaven Hills in Alderdale, Washington. So that's
Okay.
just south of Prosser.
Gotcha.
And well, I think of it, we go from the south, so north of Roosevelt, Washington. Alderdale is kind of a crossroads where the you have Shampoo, the Mercer Ranch, the new Double Canyons, and then McKinley Springs is the Andrews and Rowell families. And then next to the Mike Andrews, one of the other brothers, has Coyote Canyon. So they're all on the western edge of the Horseheaven.
I like my cat. Nice guy.
Great guy.
So this is, what is the blend on this one?
So this it's 100% Cab Franc.
Okay.
And we've started, we just started making rosé a couple years ago, and we've been just working with, Justin Andrews is the young guy that is the vineyard manager now, along with his dad Rob and his uncle Doug. And we've started working with him to figure out ways to farm it for rosé production. So meaning we crop it a little bit heavier, and we're trying to pick it a little earlier than you would for a red wine production, so you maintain some of the, a lot more acidity, sort of a freshness. I like Cabernet Franc for rosé mostly because it has enough fruit to have, floral tones, but it's not overly juicy. You maintain a lot of herbal and earthy characters.
Absolutely,
And,
yeah. Cab Franc.
Even in 14, we've made it quite a bit lighter, even and picked it a little lighter. This one even is still fairly fruity.
You get a lot of cucumber, almost like a cucumber leaf coming through.
Yeah, so we picked this and then crush and destem it into small, 1.5 bins, and then it's just soaked on the skins overnight, and then we press it all off the next morning. So it's not, we don't make red wine from this. It's just a direct press, and
so no Saunier method on this one. Just straight
no,
up
again,
rosé.
because we tried that, and it was difficult to find the right balance where you had fully ripe characters for a red wine, and that sort of, less ripe, more acidity quality that you kind of want for rosé.
So
And
you're
I
serious
started,
about your rosé.
oh, I love it. I think it's one of those wines that's I wouldn't say undervalued, but I think it gets kind of pushed under the rug as, oh, we'll just make rosé. But I think it's equally as difficult, to make as any other wine, and it should be taken seriously because it's unique. It's something. It's its own animal, and you kind of have it's a fun kind of mixture of red wine viticulture and then white wine making.
Sure.
We just do this all in stainless steel. I'd love to have more concrete down the road to do in these as well to flesh them out a little. But it's I think the most versatile food wine, you know, I always think if we're going to dinner at someone's house and you don't know what to take, it's like champagne or rosé.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay.
Well, you know, in California about 7 years ago, it was big, and it's taken that long before it's finally caught up, at least here, where
Yeah.
rosé is really, I keep it on the shelf year round.
Oh my god,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
it's
just,
like perfect with everything.
yeah, well, people are just starting to figure that out.
Well, a lot of it's, you know, similar to what we've battled with converts and Riesling over the years of just a lot of assumptions that it might be sweet or it's blush or this, that, and the other thing. And I like to see now, you see guys ordering it in bars too, because there's still probably a little bit of a, you know, guys don't want to be seen ordering glasses of rosé. And I think 5 years ago, I think anymore. Over that, I hope. I mean, it takes everybody one trip to France or, you know, southern Spain, and then, you know, they sit in some cafe where it's hot as hell and they have a nice cold glass of rosé, and that's it. You're sold for life.
Well, yeah, the rosé, I know with a lot of the French winemakers, that's kind of their go-to wine that they drink while they're working. Yeah, a lot of winemakers here, it's a bottle of beer. There, it's rosé.
This has that, takes me back to a field that used to have clover and strawberries that had grown wild on the aromatics of
Yeah, it has a lot of like
mix.
those little wild strawberries, the crunchy little ones.
Yeah.
I noticed that too. It's still a warm area. You know, the horse heaven's really hot, so it's a lot of working with the grower there to try and figure ways to leave enough crop that you maintain a lot of acidity and it doesn't get too ripe. Cabernet Franc has a pretty wide picking window compared to some other varieties. You know, you can go really, like our Franc that we'll try here is on the later end, and you can, you know, ripen it for another couple weeks and make a much more fruit-forward style. But it's always a gamble trying to figure out ways. I'm still learning how to taste grapes on the vine and knowing what kind of rosé it'll produce, because color-wise, you know, you kind of never know how much it's going to come off.
So if you guys want a really good value in rosé, right now the 2013 is Drinking Superb, very herbal, a little green olive, it's got some strawberry, as Mike said. It's got a lot of good things going on. It's a really classic rosé, and we're even drinking it a little on the warm side, and it's still drinking great. I've had a lot of rosés, you know, you start drinking them on the warm side, they're kind of getting flabby. This definitely has the acid. Good job, Luke. Obviously, the guy likes rosé. Now we're going to move on to one of my favorite varietals, and I've said this many times in this program. Actually, Mike probably makes one of my favorite Cab Francs from Washington State. I hate to admit that because.
And he's on camera. Thank you, Stan.
His head actually almost doesn't fit.
That's going to be one of those 6-second vines. One of my favorite. One of my favorite. One of my favorite.
It's the only accolades he ever gets, so he gets excited.
When I'm in the bathroom, I talk to myself.
Okay, that's enough, Mike. All right. So this is the 2011 Cor Cellars Cab Franc, Alder Ridge Vineyard, Horse Heaven Hills. Do we have a cameraman to zoom up on this? $26. And just to put it in perspective, you can buy this for $26 or get ripped off by Mike for $35. Okay, there you go.
Excellent.
He's got his own bar, you know. So this Alder Ridge Vineyard, also Horse Heaven Hills. It's on right on the Columbia River on the western edge.
Sorry, Mike.
This vineyard's now owned by Precept. I'm not sure who originally planted it. I think it bounced back ownership a few times, but John Farmer was the original vineyard manager there, and a guy I got to know pretty well when I was first getting started. And the Cabernet Franc Block 1 is the whole vineyard site of Alder Ridge, which is fairly large. It's probably over 800 acres or so. It's mostly south and east facing on those. This is one of the most beautiful vineyard sites I've ever seen. It's just these rolling hills right on those Columbia Hills on the banks of the river. They have all these cool smaller vineyards tucked down on the southern slopes. And the Cab Franc block is the only block there that's facing due north. So it looks straight across the valley up at Shampoo and McKinley Springs. And it just gets hammered by the wind, and so it's a fairly small block, and we get the outer western rows that are just, they look, I wouldn't say horrible, but they look really beat up. I mean, the bunches are always really
so why is that a good thing?
Scattered.
Because in the Rhone Valley, that they have mistral winds.
Yeah, it was accidental, admittedly, at first, because when I first got in that block, those were the only rows that were available. And he said, "Well, I'll give you these." And so, and I always just loved the character of the wine. So then recently he said, well, if some opened up in the middle, would you like those? And I just thought, you know, why mess with a good thing? So my idea on it is why it works is that I think there's a natural crop thinning that happens with the wind because you get during bloom, you know, with that type of disturbance, you don't get as much fruit set. So there's naturally a slightly lower fruit set, you know, and crop load. And then I think there's some aspect of the wind. We've learned this in the gorge at our vineyard that above a certain miles per hour, I think the leaves flutter to a point where photosynthesis shuts down.
Okay.
And then I think they ripen a lot slower because of the wind that
Okay.
gets hammered. So we're shooting for this lighter style. We put it in this Loire-shaped bottle, meaning not that it's going to taste like Chinon, but we have stylistically
You can only
the
hope.
wines that I really like. You know? Yeah, I would never compare the Loire to the Loire 7. Aren't quite the same bag, but
If you want to make
stylistically
money,
we want
if
to
you,
go for
no,
a
honestly,
lighter
if you
style.
want to make money, you can't make it exactly like a Chinon. Because
Yeah.
I would say a 15 to 20% flavor profile Chinon with that real herbaceous, you know, salad in your tomato stems, all that stuff. So
And I love that. I mean, it's Somber,
I know
Chinon,
you
those
do.
are my favorite wines. And so that's why we put it in this bottle. But stylistically also, we're trying to pick on that earlier end, you know, trying to get fruit that's not overwhelmingly ripe. Because I feel like Cabernet Franc, which you know is the parent variety to Cab Sauvignon, shares a lot of characteristics with it. I think when it gets too ripe, sometimes it tastes sort of like nondescript in a way.
it's kind of vanilla ice
It's
cream.
very hot, you know, still in those areas. And when you get really, really ripe, it sort of tastes. I wouldn't. You know, anyway, it's just a wine that, for me, it starts to lose.
Well, sure, it
you know,
loses
place.
its.
But that's
Because
just
Cab Franc's a
stylistically
real
for me.
feminine
Right.
style.
And everybody's got a different style, and I
Sure.
respect that. Personally, I just like them a little lighter.
Yeah, you struck a nice balance here, and I'll just say this is a nice balance of. It's got the herbaceousness, it's got the vegetal quality to it, but it still has the cranberry cherry thing going on, and the red flowers. I mean, I'm getting lots of red flowers out of this wine. So what makes this wine really good is it's a great food wine. I mean, you can sit down and have this with many different types of food. I can see, you know, I always hate to talk meat in front of Mike because, you know, he starts blushing. But anyway, you could have this with portobello mushrooms.
Mushrooms,
It'd be really
yeah, I mean,
good.
it's the
I'm
same-
gonna let
same
Stan die on
savory.
that comment.
Yeah. And exactly, and that's, you know, Franc, I think what's so interesting about it is that chalky, earthy character that it has. You have the fruit, you know, like to say it's more like a flowery, kind of light type of red fruits, but it also has this really kind of, it's almost a metallic, irony edge.
Yeah,
I think it tastes
absolutely.
like blood
Yeah.
or graphite.
Yeah, there's a little pencil
So
sort of.
I always, you know, Horse 7 Hills is one of the hotter parts of the state, so it's not like we're dealing with cold climate Cab Franc. And I'll plug in one from the gorge that is my neighbor, Memorous, makes a Cab Franc from a vineyard right next door to us, which truly is in that style of the, you know, a real Loire style. I think much more so than this one.
Well,
One of my favorites.
yours has a nice balance, which is what you're trying to hit. You're getting your artistic expression without making it too geeky.
And I love the guys that run this vineyard. It's a really big, very important, you know, and expensive fruit site, and it's run. The management team are all these really young guys. There's a guy named Luke also, Luke Ransom, who's the head vineyard manager, and then his team of the guys are all like probably under 35. You go in there, it's like a frat house. And they're the best. You know, these guys are all, you know, top of their game, and it's really fun to hang out with like a younger crew.
Yeah? Well, you're not too old yourself.
Do you
so
think that site is a little cooler compared to like the valley sites and maybe the northern Pasco sites? Keeps the aromatics a little better?
I don't know. I think it's probably warmer, honestly. I think that block in particular is just it really is the wind is such a factor. That I was talking to a guy at the WAG conference 2 years ago who said that the research with wind says above like 13 or 14 miles an hour it shuts down. And I mean, that's like a gentle breeze out there.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, it hums, the wind hums. So I think it's actually quite a bit hotter than some of the, I don't know about Pasco in particular, but like, it's probably heat units just behind Red Mountain, but certainly hotter than well, it's hard to tell. I don't know a lot about the Ackerman Valley, but
we're gonna have to move on.
It is, yeah.
Cor Cellars, 2011. Don't mean to cut you off, but we got a time restraint here, just a little bit. Cor Cellars 2011 Petit Verdot, which is really impressive. Milbrant Vineyards. Well, Luke, why do you call it Milbrett Vineyards? Don't they have separate vineyards? Or
They do. It's North Ridge. Is
Okay.
the vineyard that it's from, but
Okay.
we wanted to. There's sort of a. I used to buy some Sauvignon Blanc from Butch back in the day, and it's just far enough away from us that I stopped. I love the fruit, but it was over 3 hours, and we had sort of a tragedy in 2010. Right after the harvest, we had a really bad freeze event in Horseheaven, and the McKinley Springs vineyards, they lost a huge percentage of their fruit. We usually make a McKinley Springs Petit Verdot. So this year, and I called up, and said, can you help us out for this year? And they very nicely did. And not just me, but a lot of growers around the state they reached out to, because
Cool.
Horseheaven is such a major engine for grapes. But as it turned out, it's kind of a one-off. I was really interested in this because I had never worked with it before, and as opposed to the Horseheaven stuff, this has a lot more acidity and a sort of a freshness. The Wallach Slope tends to ripen a lot early in the season, but Petit Verdot is a late ripening variety, and it actually slows off. So it gets hotter earlier, but then as the season wears on in October, it actually ripens later. It's quite a bit farther north, and so it's this has become one of my favorites, and it's still kind of too far away. And I know I won't get up there enough to buy, but Petit Verdot is one of my favorite varieties.
So this is the 2011 Petit Verdot, Milbrant Vineyards, Wallach Slope. This rolls in at $26. I love Petit Verdot too.
That's when we put the Howlin' Wolf flavor on there, built for comfort, not for speed, because it's something, so much color. You think, a lot of reasons why it's blended so often. You see the color, it's just inky black. This wine is sterile filtered and you still can't see your finger.
Can you do a close up there, Mike, of the color? Maybe we can get it up. It is very inky.
So you expect, similar to a Malbec or a Zinfandel, that you're going to have this massive, wine, and it's surprisingly very floral. It reminds me a lot of the times I work in Sicily. I got obsessed with Frappato, which is one of my favorite wines, and they're the same. And these really dark, inky wines, and then on the palate, they're almost like Gamay or something, very light and floral. Petit Verdot. We use all neutral oak on this to kind of emphasize that character of it, and then it has this really nice kind of light raspberry tone.
Oh yeah, definitely raspberry on the nose. A little bit of funk on the nose, which I like. You probably really like that.
Again, I'm not as familiar with the North Ridge with Milbrant sites at all, but it has a great kind of funky.
A lot of rose petal coming through too.
And it's probably, not intentionally or stylistically, but it's probably the most kind of fruit-forward wine that we produce. And even, from the McKinley Springs sites, it's oftentimes very right.
Good balance. Good acidity, fruit,
Amazing
everything,
acidity.
a nice finish.
I noticed more so on the Wallach Slope sites than we do down here. And I wish I would live a little closer to the Wallach Slope. I think it's one of the most interesting, beautiful sites.
It has that kind of iron thing going on.
My wife's family is as well as grapes. They're in the orchard business for 5 generations, and she has all these stories. Her grandfather, they have all these orchards up in the Milbrant area, like in Mattawa. Then every time he'd drive up there, he'd come back with a pickup truck full of dirt, and then take it out to his home orchard and spread it. He's so obsessed with the dirt in Mattawa that and he's up there a couple times a week and fill his truck with a shovel every time he's there, bring it back and just spread it around the streets because he's so obsessed with the soil in Mattawa.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking the time, Luke.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to your future in the wine world. I know that you're just cracking into it, really, and there's a lot of promise ahead, and I'm really excited about what you can do in the future. And the wines that are coming out, very good. Excellent wines across the board. Even without grading them, I'll just tell you, they're all very good values for what he's charging, and they're very good quality wines. So thanks for watching. And remember, wine is not a mystery. It is just fermented grape juice. Drink it, enjoy it, be willing to expand your palate, try Petit Verdot, try Cab Franc, but never ever let anybody tell you what you should or shouldn't like. If we do that, together we can take the snob out of wine. Mike's trying to figure out the stop button. It's in the back.